3.2 Alex Lees. There are many sports that will involve some form of contact, others more than some. What sports do you think will have the most contact?
Well, I think from just watching rugby, I can confidently say that that is the most aggressive sport.
Well, actually, even though rugby is a very contact-heavy sport, the majority of the aggression, or what people think is aggressive, is actually assertion. Assertive behavior is not intended to cause harm and is goal-driven. Assertive behavior only uses the appropriate amount of force within the rules. So even though it may look aggressive, the majority of the force within rugby is within the rules and legal.
Oh, I didn't know there were two types of aggression.
Yeah, it's a common misconception that everybody does unless you know the two different types. 1.2 Aggression is a behavior with a goal of harming or injuring another being who is motivated to avoid such treatment. Gill 1980.
Oh, I was reading about Gill in the news yesterday.
Oh, what was it about?
It was something to do with Gill's criteria for aggression.
I was just about to talk about that. Do you know anything about it?
All I know is that there are four sections to it.
Yeah, there are four sections. The first section is aggression is a form of behavior that can be physical or verbal. However, thinking negative thoughts or being angry is not aggression.
Oh, I know the second one. I'm pretty sure it involves aggression that involves harm or injury. From what I can remember, this may be physical, but it also could be psychological as well. An example of this could be taunting your opponent in tennis and trying to get into their head.
Very good. The third section is about injury or harm that is directed to another being. However, kicking your opponent is aggression, but hitting your racket is not. Do you know the fourth and final criteria for aggression?
No, I don't.
Okay, so the fourth and final criterion for aggression is that it is intentional, not an accident. However, accidental harm is not aggression. The idea of aggression is interpreted by the referee. 1.3 There are many different types of aggression. These are hostile aggression, instrumental aggression, and assertion. Do you know any of these?
No, I don't.
What do you think is happening in this photo?
Oh, it looks like the guy in red is tripping up his opponent.
Yes, so that is what you call hostile aggression, and it is when the main goal is to harm someone. A good example of this is Roy Keane's tackle on the Norwegian Alf Hinge Haaland that happened in 2001 and virtually ended his career. You can see that in the photo now on your screen.
So, what is instrumental aggression?
Well, instrumental aggression is where you are trying to achieve a sporting outcome while still hurting someone.
So, like in rugby when someone does a high tackle?
Yes, that's exactly right. They are trying to win the ball and stop them whilst also hurting them at the same time. Do you remember what assertion is? I talked about it earlier.
Yes, it is a behaviour that is goal directed and it is not intended to cause harm and it is appropriate within the rules.
Good. The nature of the sport can vary. Golf won't have much aggression as well as gymnastics, whereas football or rugby will have a lot more since they are more contact driven sports. The experience of the players will vary as well. If it is an under nines game, then it will probably and hopefully won't have any aggression in it, rather than an under 15s game. The role of the coach will also vary. If it is a new coach, then they will try not to be aggressive at all, otherwise they won't fit well in the team. 1.4 Causes of aggression. There are many different causes to aggression. Do you know any of these?
Yes, I do actually.
How many do you know?
I just know the two main ones being on the losing team with a large scoring margin and pressure to win.
That's good. There are a couple more, but we don't need to go into depth about them.
I actually saw something in the sports section in the news that it was where a football player was being wound up by the fans and actually got a red card because of it.
That's a very good example of these fine margins where if the fans weren't doing that, then you wouldn't know the outcome of the match. Part 2 Theories to explain aggression. Do you know the four theories that explain aggression?
I only know one, and that is the aggressive cue hypothesis. What are the rest of them?
Well, you have the instinct theory, which is basically the biological and innate traits of a person. This is something that is constant and stable and is predictable in all situations. The most recent study of this was done by Lorenz in 1966. However, the instinct theory doesn't suggest that we can learn, and it is very extreme. It also suggests that we can't manage it since we have a built-up aggression in our body. A good example of this is Tyson Fury.
So, what about the social learning theory?
Well, the social learning theory is about learning from the environment. So, unlike the instinct theory, this theory relies on observing something, while, like the footballers or rugby players, the behaviour that they see on TV may correlate to what their team might be doing. And if they do that certain type of behaviour and they get praise from their peers or their coach, they will most likely carry on with that behaviour since they have been told that that behaviour is good. This theory was done by Bandura in 1966. However, this theory, like the instinct theory, is also very extreme and it doesn't account for any genetics.
I know another one, I think. I think it's called the frustration aggression something. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, the frustration aggression hypothesis. This theory was done by Dollard in 1939, and what he suggested is that you have a drive towards a certain sporting goal, then there will be an obstacle towards that goal, and you will most likely be frustrated. And that build up of frustration will lead to aggression. There are two possible outcomes to this. If you get away with that aggression, it will be successful and you will have a feeling of catharsis. However, if you don't get away with it, then it could lead to more frustration. This theory is bad as it rewards you for aggression. It also assumes that frustration will lead to aggression. Do you know the aggressive cue hypothesis?
Yes, I do actually. The aggressive cue hypothesis is where there's an environmental cue where it might make you more ready to be aggressive. There are two different cues. If there's an aggressive cue, you'll have an increased amount of aggression. And then if there's no aggressive cue, which reduces your aggression. This theory was by Berkowitz in 1967, and it's very good since it covers both of the sections, being aggressive and not being aggressive.
2.2 Coaches. There are many reasons for coaches to understand their players, from teaching them life skills such as developing positive relationships with friends and family. It is crucial for a coach to develop these positive relationships as it helps the coach better understand the player that they are working with. If a coach was to understand the player they're working with, it will make it easier to tell when a player is starting to become aggressive or being frustrated, and sub that player off.
Can you give me any good examples of this in sport?
Yes, there are a lot of them. One good example is Pep Guardiola, who is a Premier League football manager for Manchester City. Back in 2018, Sergio Aguero was becoming more and more frustrated since he hasn't scored a goal in that whole match. And since Pep Guardiola had a very good positive relationship with him, he called him over and actually calmed him down. And they went on to win that game against rivals Manchester City. In addition to this, they were 1 point. They won the title by 1 point, so that game could be argued that it won them the title. Part 3: Strategies to eliminate aggression. There are many ways to eliminate aggression for players, coaches, and fans. Do you know any of these?
Yes, I do. For players, mental rehearsal is a really good way of calming yourself down, since it relaxes all of the muscles in your body and you're a lot calmer than you were before.
Yes, for coaches, they can sub off the aggressive players. This will eliminate them from the game, allowing the team to have a better overall mindset and hopefully win the game because of that. If the coach didn't sub off the player that was becoming aggressive, then that person might get a red card, which could negatively affect the team.
And are there any others?
Yes, for the fans, they could implement more CCTV. This will hopefully deter fans from doing any of these bad things that they might want to do. Other implications, such as bans or fines, could occur as well if they don't implement more CCTV. Thank you for listening.